externa. So the term otitis means an ear infection, and externa relates to the location of this infection. So externa is the external outer ear. You can also get otitis media. So otitis media is an infection of the middle ear, so that's the cavity behind the eardrum. And accompanying this otitis externa, we have this discharge, also known as otorrhea. And you can see there the ear canal is heavily inflamed, especially at the entrance. There's a lot of dry skin there on the cavum concha. So your external ear, the bowl of your ear, is called the concha. And you then have the part that goes slightly higher up. It's a little cave there. That's called the symbiconcha, and the part of the bowl that goes towards the ear canal entrance, the main body of the bowl, that's called the cavum concha. So there's a lot of swelling there with this patient. So it's almost like an eczema or psoriasis, and the aim of this is to clear as much infected debris as possible to reveal the eardrum. The patient will require some antibiotic. Either oral antibiotics or ointments or spray that goes topical into the ear, and we're just performing microsuction. I'm currently using a standardized sonar suction probe, and we want to avoid contact with the canal wall wherever possible. Patient, as I mentioned, has got an infection, so the ear is very, very tender. By applying pressure on the canal, it can be uncomfortable. So we're going to be really gentle here. You may have noticed that initially there's a bit of misting, a bit of fogging, a bit of condensation. When you've got an ear infection, the temperature of the ear is increased, and that causes hot air to condense on the colder lens of the endoscope tip. The great thing about an endoscope is if you just have the endoscope in the ear for 30 seconds, it would automatically demist, because the endoscope itself, the lenses, the optorod lens system, is enveloped by optical fibres, and they are used to transport light into the ear. And because this surrounds the lenses, the heat from the light dissipates evenly around the endoscope, which then, if you leave the endoscope in the ear for 30 seconds or so, it will heat up the lens sufficiently enough to the surrounding temperature, which will then cause that misting to disappear and evaporate. Alternatively, as soon as you put the suction probe in, it helps to evaporate that misting. So we've tunneled through there. We can see the eardrum at a distance. Now, I'm just trying to mop up as much debris as possible for the patient prior to them using their antibiotics, as I mentioned. And I'm reverted now to a fine end suction probe because we're working closer to the canal. We want more precision here, and if we do come in contact with the canal wall, the fine end is going to be less uncomfortable for the patient. So I'm going to allow you to continue watching that, and whilst you are, I'm going to answer some of the questions from yesterday's video. One of the questions were, if you have a lot of hair at the entrance of the ear, does that cause itchiness? Does it relate to itchiness? Not always. A lot of patients really, especially elderly patients, male elderly patients, and people from an Asian background like myself, they come with very hairy ears and it doesn't cause them a problem. I suspect if you get a bundle of hairs and it's loose in the ear, they can. Someone asked why I'm not recently weighing or measuring the wax. My bad, it's just sometimes we're just so busy in clinic and we need to wipe down for the next patient, so I just at the moment just so busy, I just don't have time in between patients to be able to do that. So I will make an effort to recommence measuring and weighing where possible. Someone asked whether a stroke can contribute to hearing loss. The answer to that is yes, it can. Not always, but if you've had a stroke, so the left ear is connected to the right side of the brain. The right ear is connected to the left side of the brain. So if your stroke is originated from the left side of your brain, it can sometimes affect your hearing in your right and vice versa. So it is possible. Sometimes it's, but yeah, of course, if you've had a stroke and you lost your hearing, consequently, straight afterwards, it's very likely to be the attributing cause. But sometimes it's difficult to diagnose the actual cause of hearing loss. There was a question about the history of earwax removal, going back to the Vikings and to the Far East. It's a very interesting topic. I've never really delved into it, so it's something that when I get time, I will do. And once I do, I will report back. But yeah, it's an interesting question. So sorry I don't have the answer, but I'm not aware. I've not really fully researched the ancient methods of removal. Another question was, what is my favourite type of patient? To be honest, I think the patient referred to it after they asked the question. All patients are my favourite. There are a couple of patients we've had during lockdown, which has been really, really hard because they, I didn't treat them in the end and showed them the door, but they're being difficult with our COVID procedures, which we've got in place for the health and well-being of our patients, truth be told. But other than that, no, I don't have any favourite. All patients are, I welcome all patients and treat them all equally, and so no preference there. Actually, I'll tell a lie. My favourite patients are those elderly patients who come as a couple, and they know how to end each other's sentences and have been together for so long, and it's just a beautiful thing to witness. So I would say actually my favourite patients are those who come in with their partners, and it's just lovely to see them together and their interaction and the love they share for one another. Another question was in reference to whether there's a difference in the colour of wax with regards to ethnicity. Not typically, but if you're from a European background or ancestry or heritage, or an African background, you generally have more wet wax. So you have this sweaty oil that people who come from the Far East and the North Americas don't have, and that sweaty oil can, once it evaporates, I'll come back to the moment. So this is the before image and this is an after image, so you can get a good comparison of what we managed to do there. So when this oily sweat that European ancestry heritage and African heritage have, as this oily sweat evaporates, it can be quite a smelly odour that's released, but it can quicken the oxidization process as well, so you can get slightly darker wax. If you've got more dry skin in your ear, that's a higher composition of wax, which is made up of dead skin, because most wax is made up of dead skin, then you get more of a glossier appearance of wax. And as mentioned, people from the Far East or the North Americas generally have more of a drier wax with more dead skin. Another question was, how do you train to become an audiologist? So when I became trained to become an audiologist, it was a dedicated Bachelor of Science degree. It's an audiological degree, similar to optometry or dentistry. So it's separate to medicine. Another question was whether you should only have your ears examined if you've got any symptoms. It's a tricky one, that, because in the UK, the resources at the moment are really tough on the NHS. But I suspect if you can go every year or 2 years, just like you would to a dentist or an optician for a checkup, that will do no harm. Of course, if you've got any symptoms, do get it checked. Someone asked whether I've had wax removed before. I haven't. My wax naturally migrates, so I've never had to have wax removed before, but I've had people practice the procedure in my ears for their training. Some people made reference to some topics they would like me to talk about, which include Meniere's, cancers of the ears, tumours, and eustachian tube dysfunction. So I'll try and incorporate that in other videos where they're kind of relevant, but the point noted. Someone asked how we clean the instrument. So the endoscope, we use a very high level disinfectant. All the instruments to actually remove the wax, the suction probes, hooks, scoots, forceps, they're all single use, so we don't clean them. We just use them, fresh ones, for the next patient. I'm just going to whisk through some of the answers. Someone asked whether I get tired with my hands. No. If I've removed a bug from the ear yet, I haven't, not yet anyway. Someone asked whether you can see the crystals for BPPV. You can't. Someone asked what treatment is for perforation if it doesn't self-heal. So there's tympanoplasty, so there's a surgery that can patch up that hole. Someone asked about tinnitus. That's a whole topic, but there's many causes of tinnitus. The best thing to do is get your hearing tested.